She cut my hair. Daniel will never believe you. He thinks you're confused when you're upset. The camera recorded everything. My hair was only the first thing.
My son's fiancé cut off 14 inches of my hair while I was trapped beneath a salon cape, and then smiled at me in the mirror. Daniel will never believe you, she whispered. He thinks you're confused when you're upset. What she did not know was that the security camera above the front desk had recorded everything. What I did not know was that my hair was only the first thing she planned to take from me. Hello, my name is Evelyn Carter. I am 63 years old, and until 6 months ago, I believed patience was the same thing as kindness. I know better now. I live outside Asheville, North Carolina, in a white farmhouse my late husband, Thomas, and I restored over 30 years. Our only son, Daniel, grew up there. He learned to walk across the old pine floors, did his homework at the kitchen island, and proposed to his girlfriend beneath the maple tree in our backyard. Her name was Vanessa Reed. When Daniel introduced us, Vanessa seemed polished and thoughtful. She remembered birthdays. She sent thank you cards. She worked as an event planner in Charlotte and could make any room look expensive without appearing crowded. Daniel looked happier than I had seen him since his father died, so I welcomed her. I ignored little things. Vanessa corrected the way I pronounced certain wines. She replaced the framed family photographs in my guest room before a holiday dinner because she said they looked visually noisy. When I wore a blue flowered dress to their engagement party, she told me it was brave to wear something so cheerful at my age. Each insult came wrapped like a gift. If I objected, she laughed and said I had misunderstood. 3 weeks before the wedding, she invited me to what she called a bridal family spa day. She said she wanted us to bond. I almost declined, but Daniel had been working long hours, and I wanted peace before the wedding. At the salon, Vanessa handed the stylist a photograph without showing me. The stylist, a nervous young woman named Tessa, ran her fingers through my silver hair. It reached the middle of my back. I had worn it long since I was 19. Thomas loved it. On the morning he died, he had braided it loosely while we sat on the hospital balcony. Keeping it long was not about refusing to age. It was a private thread connecting me to the life we had shared. Just a trim, I told Tessa. Vanessa stood behind me and laughed. We discussed this, Evelyn. The wedding style requires a clean silhouette. No, we didn't. Her smile disappeared. Daniel hates the old-fashioned look. He was embarrassed to tell you. That hurt, but it did not change my answers. Nothing more. Tessa nodded. Then Vanessa asked her to get a particular hair treatment from the back room. As soon as Tessa left, Vanessa picked up the scissors. I saw the silver flash in the mirror. Before I could rise, she grabbed my hair at the base of my neck and cut through it. The sound was rough and slow. I shouted. My hands caught beneath the cape, and the heavy length fell across my lap and slid onto the floor. For a second, nobody moved. Vanessa leaned close enough for me to smell her perfume. You old-fashioned woman, she said softly. Daniel will never believe you. Then her bright public smile returned. When Tessa rushed back, Vanessa claimed I had panicked after agreeing to a dramatic cut. She spoke calmly while I shook. 2 other women stared at their phones. The receptionist looked frightened. I wanted to scream. Instead, I looked above the front desk and saw a small black camera aimed toward us. So I became very still. Tessa repaired the uneven cut into a short silver bob. She cried while she worked and slipped her business card into my purse. On the back she wrote, I saw it. Call me. Outside, Vanessa linked her arm through mine as if we were friends. If you create drama, she said, Daniel will think grief has made you unstable. I've already told him you've been forgetting things. That was the moment my fear changed shape. This was not a cruel joke. She had prepared a story before she attacked me. At home, I called Daniel. Vanessa had reached him first. Mum, he said carefully. Vanessa told a new look and then got overwhelmed. Are you okay? I looked at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. I hardly recognized myself. Did you tell her you hated my hair? What? No, I always closed my eyes. Then come see me tonight. Alone, he sighed. We have the final venue meeting. Can this wait until tomorrow? Behind him, I heard Vanessa say, tell her to take her medication and rest. I did not take any medication except vitamins. Tomorrow, I said, and ended the call. I locked the doors. Then I opened the drawer where I kept Thomas's old voice recorder. I tested the batteries and placed it in my purse. At 9 that night, an email arrived from the wedding venue. It thanked me for confirming that the remaining balance of $48,000 would be transferred from the Carter Family Trust. I had never approved that transfer. At the bottom of the email was a digital signature. My name. The forged signature looked almost perfect. Vanessa had copied the long curve in my E, and the small break I always left between Evelyn and Carter. But she had made one mistake. Since Thomas died, I signed legal documents with my middle initial, M. The signature on the transfer form did not include it. I did not call Daniel again. The next morning, I drove to the office of my attorney, Margaret Shaw. Margaret had handled our family business for 22 years. She was 70, sharp-eyed, and nearly impossible to surprise. When she saw my hair, she put down her pen. I told her everything. She read the venue email twice. Then she logged into the trust account and turned the monitor toward me. Someone had attempted 3 transfers in 10 days. The first was $48,000 for the venue. The second was $12,000 for a luxury honeymoon upgrade. The third was $95,000 to a company called Blue Laurel Events. That is Vanessa's company, I said. Margaret's mouth tightened. All 3 requests use your electronic authorization. None has cleared. Thomas required dual approval for any transfer above $10,000. They still need mine. Relief lasted only a second. How did she get access? That is what we need to learn. Margaret froze the trust and called the bank's fraud department. Then she asked whether Vanessa had been inside my home unsupervised. She had. After my minor knee surgery 4 months earlier, Daniel and Vanessa raised and helped organize paperwork. Vanessa spent an entire afternoon in my study. At the time, I had been grateful. Margaret opened my estate file. The original trust would eventually give Daniel the farmhouse, the family hardware stores, and most of our investments. Until then, I controlled everything. If doctors declared me mentally incapable, Daniel would become temporary trustee. And if Vanessa married him, I said, she would be one step from the money. Only if Daniel cooperated, Margaret replied. Or if she convinced him he was protecting me. That afternoon, Daniel arrived at my house with Vanessa beside him, though I had asked him to come alone. I turned on the recorder before opening the door. Vanessa carried soup. Daniel carried a folder. They sat across from me at the kitchen table. Daniel looked exhausted. Mom, Vanessa says yesterday was frightening, he began. She thinks you might need a medical evaluation. Vanessa touched his hand. We both do. She slid the folder toward me. Inside was a consent form for a private neurological clinic. Behind it was a temporary financial management agreement. This gives Daniel access to my accounts, I said. Only while you recover, Vanessa answered. Stress can make memory problems worse. Name one thing I have forgotten. She looked sad, as if the question itself proved her point. You forgot agreeing to the haircut. You forgot offering to pay the venue balance. Last week, you called Daniel twice about the same dinner. The second call was to tell him the time had changed. Daniel stared at Vanessa. You didn't tell me that. Because it wasn't important. I pushed the folder back. I will see my own physician. I will not sign this. Vanessa's eyes turned cold for less than a second. Then she began to cry. She said she loved me. She said she had lost a grandmother to dementia. She said my suspicion was a symptom, not a choice. Daniel put his arm around her while I sat alone on the other side of my own table. After they left, I watched from the window. Before getting into the car, Vanessa stopped crying instantly. She said something to Daniel and glanced back at the house. The next surprise came from Tessa, the stylist. She called from a borrowed phone because the salon manager had suspended her. Vanessa threatened the owner. Tessa told me. She said she'd destroy the salon online unless they erased the recording. The owner agreed, but I copied it first. We met in a grocery store parking lot. Tessa gave me a flash drive containing the video. It showed Vanessa waiting until the stylist left, grabbing the scissors, and cutting my hair after I clearly said no. The microphone did not capture every word, but it captured enough. She also left this, Tessa said. It was the photograph Vanessa had given her. On the back, in Vanessa's handwriting, were the words, short enough to make her look frail. No exceptions. I felt sick. Margaret sent the evidence to a detective who specialized in elder financial exploitation. Detective Luis Ramirez did not make promises. He asked questions. Who had access to my electronic signature? Who benefited if I appeared incompetent? Had Vanessa done this before? That last question followed me home. I searched public court records. Vanessa Reed had never been charged with a crime. But 7 years earlier, a woman named Vanessa Cole had been sued by the family of a wealthy widower in Virginia. The case had been settled and sealed. The photograph attached to an old Society article showed the same face. She had changed her last name, and according to the article, she had been engaged before. Her former fiancé's mother had been placed under emergency guardianship 2 weeks before their canceled wedding. The former fiancé's name was Andrew Hale. It took Detective Ramirez 3 days to locate him. It took me one honest voicemail to persuade him to call. Andrew told me Vanessa had entered his family the same way she entered mine: warm, helpful, perfectly attentive. His widowed mother, Judith, owned several rental properties. Vanessa began by helping Judith with appointments. Then she told Andrew his mother was forgetting things. Receipts disappeared. Dates were changed. Conversations were misquoted. Vanessa created confusion and then used that confusion as proof. Judith was placed under temporary guardianship after Vanessa produced statements from 2 people who claimed to have witnessed dangerous behavior. Both witnesses were connected to Vanessa's event business. We stopped the permanent order, Andrew said, but only after my mother spent 6 weeks in a care facility. Vanessa vanished when she realized we were investigating her. We settled a civil case because Mom could not survive a public trial. Why wasn't she arrested? Too many documents looked voluntary. Too many conversations happened without witnesses. This time we had a witness. We had video. We had forged transfers. But Detective Ramirez wanted proof that Vanessa, not Daniel, had submitted the requests. The bank's technical records showed they came from an internet address assigned to Daniel's apartment. Vanessa could blame him, and Daniel might protect her. I needed the truth spoken where he could hear it. So I stopped fighting the wedding. I told Daniel I would attend the rehearsal dinner. I apologized for causing tension. I even told Vanessa I had scheduled a medical assessment for the following week. She believed she had won. Her messages became sweet again. She selected a high-necked gray dress for me and said it would make my short hair look intentional. Then she asked me to bring the trust papers to the rehearsal dinners so Daniel could help organize them after dessert. I agreed. Margaret prepared a false packet. The cover pages looked real, but the document inside granted Daniel temporary control of only one dormant account containing $87. We marked the pages and recorded the serial number of the folder. The rehearsal dinner was held at a mountain hotel with glass walls overlooking the Blue Ridge. 60 guests drank champagne beneath white flowers. Vanessa wore ivory, though the wedding was the next day. Daniel kept watching me as if he wanted to say something but could not find a private moment. Vanessa made certain we never had one. During dinner, she raised her glass. "To family," she said, "and to Evelyn, who finally trusted us enough to accept help." People applauded. I smiled. Then she reached out and touched my hair. "See, change can be beautiful." I wanted to pull away. Instead, I said, "You're right. Sometimes one cut reveals everything underneath." Her hand paused. After dessert, I placed the folder on a side table and walked onto the terrace. As planned, Andrew Hale approached me and pretended to ask for directions. Across the room, her face lost all color. She grabbed the folder and hurried toward a service hallway. Daniel followed. I followed them at a distance, my recorder running. Detective Ramirez waited in a nearby room, but he could not intervene until we had evidence of a crime or immediate danger. From behind a half-open door, I heard Daniel ask why she had taken the folder. "Your mother gave it to us," Vanessa snapped. "She gave it to me, not you. And who is that man?" "Nobody. You know him." Silence. Then Daniel asked the question that broke everything open. "Did you submit those trust transfers in my name?" I stopped breathing. Vanessa did not deny it. "I did what you were too weak to do," she said. "The money will be yours eventually. Evelyn is lonely, stubborn, and half lost in the past. Once we're married, we can manage her properly." "Manage her? You cut her hair. Hair grows back. $48,000 doesn't appear by magic. Do you want this wedding or not?" Daniel said he had found copies of my signature on her laptop. He had also seen emails to a doctor he had never met. Vanessa told him to stop pretending he had a conscience. Then she said, "After tomorrow, your mother can sign the guardianship papers, or we can make sure she has an episode convincing enough that she won't have a choice." The door moved beneath my hand. Vanessa saw me. For 1 second, all three of us stood still. Then she rushed forward, snatched the recorder from my hand, and threw it against the wall. "Look what she made me do," Vanessa screamed. "She's following us. She's paranoid." Daniel stepped between us. "No," he said. "You did this." Her Vanessa changed again. Her anger vanished. Her voice became soft. She told him I had manipulated him since childhood. She told him Andrew was paid. She told him we were jealous of their happiness. Then Detective Ramirez walked into the hallway. "Mrs. Reed," he said, "the record is only a backup." He pointed toward the ceiling. The hotel security camera had captured the entire confrontation. Daniel's phone, hidden in his jacket pocket, had recorded the conversation too. Vanessa looked toward the exit. Before she could run, 2 uniformed officers entered carrying the blue folder she had dropped beside the service elevator. Inside it, they found more than the false trust agreement. They found a small bottle of prescription sedatives labeled with another person's name. The wedding was canceled at 11:43 that night. Vanessa was not immediately taken to jail for cutting my hair. The officers arrested her for possession of medication that was not prescribed to her and for assault after she shoved Tessa, who had arrived to identify the salon evidence. The larger case took months. Those months changed my family. Daniel came home with me after the rehearsal dinner. He sat at the kitchen table where we had once discussed the medical forms. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he began to cry. He apologized for doubting me. He apologized for every moment he had chosen the easiest explanation. Vanessa had a year teaching him to see my independence as hostility and my grief as instability. She showed him edited messages. She claimed I insulted her in private. Whenever he questioned her, she accused him of failing to defend his future wife. "I should have known you," he said. "Yes," I answered. He looked startled. Perhaps he expected me to tell him it was not his fault. "You should have known me," I repeated. "I forgive you for being deceived, but forgiveness does not erase your responsibility. Trust will have to be rebuilt." He nodded. That was the first honest conversation we had shared in months. The investigation found that Vanessa had created a private file about me. It contained photographs of my medicine cabinet, copies of my signature, notes about my habits, and a list of phrases designed to upset me before witnesses. She planned to make me appear confused at the wedding, then persuade Daniel to seek emergency control of the trust. The sedatives were meant for my champagne. Blue Laurel Events was nearly bankrupt. Vanessa had taken deposits from 3 couples and used the money to pay for other weddings. She needed my trust to cover the missing funds before clients discovered the scheme. Andrew and Judith Hale agreed to testify. So did Tessa. The salon owner surrendered the original recording after learning that deleting it could be treated as destruction of evidence. Bank records tied the fraudulent transfer requests to Vanessa's laptop. Metadata showed she had created the forms and inserted my copied signature. Vanessa eventually pleaded guilty to attempted financial exploitation, forgery, fraud, unlawful possession of controlled medication, and assault. Other victims came forward after her arrest appeared in the news. She received a prison sentence, but the courtroom gave me a different kind of justice. At sentencing, Vanessa's attorney described her as a frightened young woman crushed by wedding debt. Vanessa turned toward Daniel and cried. It was the same performance she had given at my kitchen table. Then the prosecutor played the salon video. The courtroom watched her wait until Tessa left. They watched her lift my hair. They heard me say 2 inches. Nothing more. They watched the scissors close. Vanessa did not look at me after that. When the judge allowed me to speak, I stood with my short silver hair uncovered. She believed my age made me easy to race, I said. She tried to turn grief into evidence, patience into weakness, and love into access. She did not only steal money. She tried to steal my credibility before she stole my freedom. I looked at Vanessa. You were right about one thing. Daniel did not believe me at first. But truth does not become false because it arrives through the voice of an older woman. And a woman does not lose ownership of her body, her property, or her story because someone younger finds her inconvenient. The judge sentenced her that afternoon. Daniel spent the next year rebuilding his life. He moved into a small apartment and began therapy. He repaid the wedding expenses that could not be recovered, even though I never asked him to. Every Sunday, he came to the farmhouse and worked beside me, repairing fences, painting the porch, restoring the trust between us one ordinary act at a time. I changed my estate plan too. Daniel would still inherit enough to be secure, but the hardware stores would pass into an employee ownership trust. A portion of my estate would fund legal assistance for older adults facing financial exploitation. My wealth would no longer sit like a prize waiting for someone to control me. It would protect people who had been told their age made their voices unreliable. Tessa used the settlement from the salon to open a small studio of her own. Above every mirror, she placed a simple sign, your hair, your choice, always. On the anniversary of the canceled wedding, Daniel and I stood by the maple tree in my backyard. He handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a silver hairpin made from Thomas's wedding ring, which I had once given Daniel for safekeeping. Dad would have believed you immediately, he said. I ran my fingers over the metal. Your father made mistakes too, I told him. Good people are not people who never fail. They are people who face what their failure cost and choose to become better. My hair had grown to my shoulders by then. I twisted it back and secured it with the silver pin. Daniel smiled, but there was sadness in it. Are you ever going to grow it long again? I looked across the field where evening light rested on the grass. For decades, my long hair had carried memories of the girl I had been, the man I had loved, and the life we built. Losing it was a violation. But choosing what came next belonged to me. Maybe, I said. Maybe not. Then I told him the truth I had understood before Vanessa ever entered our lives. Revenge was not watching her lose the wedding, the money, or her freedom. Revenge was refusing to become the helpless old woman she had invented. She cut my hair because she thought it held my strength. She learned too late that my strength had never been in the part she could reach with scissors.